Hi. I realized on my way into the office this morning that we talk a lot about leverage around here. And for some of us that have been around this environment for longer and have been taking lots of classes to talk about it and things like that, we may take it for granted what that actually means. And so I thought I would put something out there for everybody to say, hey, what the heck is this? What do you really mean by leverage? And how does that look for you? And most importantly, how can you put it to work? What can you do to implement the concept of leverage, no matter where you're at in your business? And I think for the people that already have teams around them and have already been hiring people, probably get this and may not need to struggle to find out how they can implement leverage. Although what we'll talk about may prompt some new ideas for you. I think most of all, this leverage 101 concept is more for the people that go, hey, I don't have a team. I'm an individual, and I'd love to grow more. I'd love to grow my production. I'd love to use my time better. I just don't know how. Can you talk about what this concept of leverage means to me? And that's really what the focus here is going to be. So, number one, how would we define leverage in this context of building a business? It's a system, tool, or person that's going to amplify your results. Simple as that. System, tool, or person, STP, easy way to remember it. System, tool, or person that amplifies your results. This whole thing is kind of the concept of leverage in a business is a metaphor for actual physical leverage, which the best way to explain that is if you think about a seesaw or a teeter-totter, same thing, I think, right? Where you got the thing in the middle, the fulcrum, and then you've got something across it that goes like this. So with that, well, if I take a block, a heavy block, and I go to lift it up, it's going to take me a certain amount of energy to get it to a certain point. If I take that block and put it on one side of the teeter-totter, and I go and push on this side of it, I can lift that block to the same height with less effort. Or if I use the same amount of effort, I can lift it higher or faster. And so that's physical leverage. And when we talk about leverage in a business, it's just a metaphor for that. How can we take the same amount of effort and amplify that into greater results? Or I guess if you look at it that way, how could you achieve the same results with less effort? Although we're usually looking for greater results, aren't we? So the concept is same amount of input, greater output. And when you hit a certain number of hours in a day and you're working the amount of hours that you are willing or able to allot to whatever we're talking about here, at that point, you're maxed out on time. You can get more efficient with your time. Most importantly, you can implement a system, tool, or person that will amplify your results given the same amount of input. So let's talk about the definitions of system, tool, and person. Now, we use it in that order because it makes for a nice acronym, STP. We can all remember that. Although in the order of kind of ease of implementation and cost up to higher complexity and greater potential, I would say the order is tool, system, person. So let's talk about them in that order. So what's a tool? For each of these, I'm going to give you kind of what I see as the definition of it, a literal example in the physical, actual leverage way to help you see what I'm talking about. And I'll give you some examples that might apply within your business. So for a tool is usually the least expensive, easiest to implement, carries some leverage potential, typically not the greatest amount because it's cheaper and easier to implement. For example, if you got to nail some boards together into a box, you pick up a hammer. I mean, that's a tool, right? You can nail the hammer with the tool a lot better than you could without it. And so it's easy to pick it up. It's cheap. Bam, you got your tool. You were able to achieve building this little thing in a shorter amount of time with less energy than without it. So what would be examples of a tool in your business? Well, for example, if you're talking about it in a real estate business, you might say, well, I went ahead and bought a listing presentation, like the actual slideshow and maybe the script. So you go and you grab that tool. Now you can use it. Now you don't have to think about what you're going to do. You don't have to redo or construct anything for each presentation you go on. You bought it, you implement it, saves you time, gets you better results and saves you time. That's a tool. It might cost you a few $100 and you're done. Another tool might be like some sort of tracking tool that you use, just keeping track of what you're doing each week. And how does that help you achieve results? Well, now at a glance, you can see where you stand in relation to your goal. You can understand your business better and your progress, and that helps you know what you need to do. So it gives you knowledge. This is a tool that gives you knowledge to be able to increase your production. So that's a basic tool. Now there's kind of a little, I don't know, I don't want this part to be confusing. Certain times a person can really be a tool, and I'm not calling them a tool, so let's not go out of context here. If you're hiring people on an ad hoc basis, just for one task or one little tiny sliver of something you need done, that's more of a tool. When we talk about people, that's when we're like bringing someone into your business. So a person used in relation to a tool could be something like a transaction coordinator that processes all your deals from contract to close. A listing manager that you go, hey, here's a listing, and they run a system on. They do some things. They take it off your plate. You're probably paying them on a per listing or a per contract basis. Maybe a sign installer. I mean, a sign, that's great. It saves you some time. You order the sign, they put it in, they take it out when it's done. It saves you the time of going there and sticking the frame in the ground and stuff. So it's a quick and simple implementation. It's cheap, and it saves you some time. It's not going to drastically amplify your results. So, a runner on an ad hoc basis, or a sign installation company, some sort of administrative per transaction sort of system. These are all things that are kind of a tool in the context that it's simple, it's easy to implement, it's low cost, and it gives you some time back. So that's what I mean by tool. Now let's move on to systems. The system is typically, this is going to be a series of things. So it's going to be a little bit more complex to implement. It's going to require some setup or some planning or some new behaviors, some different behaviors. It's also going to come with a bigger reward. It's going to have bigger leverage than with the tool. So in our physical definition of leverage, where our tool is the hammer that we use to create this, a box of wood. Well, a system might be an assembly line that arranges the pieces of wood, hammers them together, and spits out the box, right? So that is more complicated than just picking up the hammer, and requires more setup. And yet at the end of the day, that thing is going to create more boxes than you can do individually. So, and it's going to do so in a much more powerful way than just the hammer. So the system is kind of like your assembly line. Well, what are some examples of a business system? First thing that comes to mind is a CRM, or customer relationship management, some sort of database where you can keep your client information and ideally can actually do some things for you in an automated way. So if you set up a CRM and you set everybody up on, for instance, in KW Command, the monthly neighborhood nurture, well, every month, every person in there is going to get an automated email that gives them a market update of their hyperlocal neighborhood. Well, if you were to do that individually, would that even be doable? Maybe for a small number of people, but I mean, you really can't do that for a larger number of people. Your CRM can. You can't manually remember when everybody's birthdays are, or their home purchase or sale anniversaries, or how many kids they got, except your CRM can. And so through doing that, through implementing a system like that, you can generate greater results because you can have more powerful conversations with your clients. You can deliver them value that you couldn't do by yourself. Now, your CRM is going to require some setup. I mean, you're going to have to get one. You're going to have to get all the information into it. You're going to have to implement some action plans. You're going to have to change some behaviors in order to use it effectively. And yet the power of having that CRM is many more times in revenue what it costs you in expense. So a CRM is probably the most fundamental of systems that you could implement in any business. Another idea for a system in your business might be checklists. Now, a checklist is not just one tool. I mean, it could involve many different things. Although a checklist you could have set up so that without thinking, you or someone else can run through your business processes and procedures without missing any, and making sure that you're being thorough and timely in providing a high service standard. And by doing that, taking out the thinking and putting things in order so that everything's being done the way it should be and when it should be, That's a system that's going to save you time and it's going to create better outcomes. And specifically, you could get more referrals for having provided better service in a more timely manner, more consistently as well. So in terms of systems, these are some examples. What other ideas can you think of that are systems that you could use in your business? If you want to pause it there, go ahead and think. Lastly, people. Now, people are the pinnacle of leverage because a person is more powerful and has more upside potential for you and your business than any of the other things that we've just talked about. They are the most expensive. You're going to pay more for a full-time employee than you are for a CRM. You're virtually always going to pay more for that. They're the most difficult to get right because they're the most complex, and they're going to require more time input than tools or systems. And yet the leverage potential of a person is far, far, far greater than anything we've talked about in the past. The right person can transform your business, life, and future, whereas the other things can help. Only a person has this massive amount of potential to change your business and life. So again, in our physical example, what's the idea of a person in making these boxes? We took a hammer, we nailed the box together ourselves. Then we had an assembly line that put the box together and hammered it together all by itself. Well, who's the person in this context? Person could be the person who designed the assembly line and who hires the people to work on it. It could be the person who just manages the assembly line maybe once it's built. In any event, previously you were the one either hammering the box or you were the one making the repairs on the assembly line and monitoring the output and making sure it runs fine. And with the right person can manage the system, the tools, and any of the other people that are serving as tools to this function. The person can manage all that. And now what are you left to do? Well, you're left to do whatever your higher income producing activities are. So how does this work in a business, a person? Well, maybe the person is the one that finds, sets up, manages, and delivers on your CRM. Now that could be really powerful. Maybe this is the person that designs and manages your checklists. Maybe this is the person that manages the people who do a lot of the other work, like your contract to close or listing management or other administrative support roles. What a person can do is almost limitless, and eventually people can replace you. In fact, if you think about it, even if you were the best rock star person, whatever it is you're doing, let's say you're the best lead generator on earth. Well, at a certain point, there's a certain number of other people that can replace all of that, all of those results. If you're like, man, I'm a listing machine, I generate 2 listing appointments every day. Well, one other person, maybe most people can't match that, except if you get 2 or 3 other people, now maybe they can replace your performance. And in fact, at a certain point, and especially with the right people, they will exceed your performance to the point where now you are, now your role is more in leadership than in actually doing the work and creating the output directly. So the people are the ones that can set up and manage and run all the other systems and tools and even other people. And these are the ones that can really just totally blow up your potential and take you sky high. And so that's kind of the pinnacle of leverage. Well, we've talked about what is leverage. We've talked about breaking down these different possibilities within it and what it might mean for your business. So now the most important thing, how do you start? How can you use this and however many, how can you use the last 14 minutes of your life and make sure that you amplify that 14 minutes into some results? Well, here's some ideas of where you can start. The simple formula is you want to start with how much money are you averaging per hour for your own efforts? This is, wherever you're at, whether you're individual or you have a team already, what are you earning? What are you bringing into your business per hour? Well, that's easy enough to calculate. If you want to say an average of 2,000 hours a year, which is roughly 40 hours a week, then take your gross income and just divide it by, instead of gross income divided by 2,000, just lop off those 3 zeros. So if you're grossing 50,000, divide that by 2, $25 an hour. If you're grossing 100,000, divide that by 2. That's $50 an hour. If you're grossing 500,000, divided by 2, you're bringing in $250 an hour. So first, start with that and figure out the dollars per hour you're bringing into your business. That's your average hourly rate. So I want to stress one operative word there. That's your average hourly rate, because wouldn't you agree that of all the things you do in your business, certain ones generate more income than others? I mean, when you're talking about really basic work that doesn't require a high amount of skill or anything or understanding or knowledge of the business, those are generating less than your average, whereas certain activities like generating new business are worth way more than your average. So if you take your average, whatever that number is, and ask yourself the question, what activities am I doing that I could replace at a cost equal to or lesser than my current average? So if I'm averaging $50 an hour, what activities am I currently doing that I could replace at a cost of $50 an hour or less? I think you'd agree you could replace a lot of stuff for $50 an hour. What's the system, tool, or person that you can use to replace that activity at a cost of less than or equal to $50 an hour? So that's the question that will allow you to identify the first place to start. What could be some examples? Creating marketing flyers and marketing material. You can virtually always replace that at less than $50 an hour, or even 25. Cleaning your office or organizing things. You can definitely replace that. General answering phones and emails. Data entry work, that's a really big one. I mean, we do a lot of data entry, especially if you have a CRM. If you're currently doing that, you can replace that at a cost probably far lower than what you're averaging. I mentioned sign installation, another really easy one that you can go, here's the check, and it saves you the time of going there and doing it. Taking your own listing photos. That's the one we talk about a lot. You can hire somebody to do that. You don't go. They go, they do it, they bring it back, and it didn't cost you any time beyond placing the call to put the order in or plugging it in online. So lots and lots of things I think you'll find if you just do that quick formula. Income divided by 2, that's your hourly rate. What can you replace for a cost equal to or less than that hourly rate? And who or what is the system, tool, or person that can be that leverage for you? Now, the last key point that is so super critical that you walk away with this is that when you replace those activities, the key is that you use that time for the higher income producing activities. So if I'm going, hey, I'm going to replace 10 hours a week with, by eliminating all of my data entry work that I'm currently doing, and then I turn around and spend that 10 hours a week on Facebook, well, now you're just going to net less money. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. When you take that 10 hours a week off your plate and you use that for activities that are above your hourly average currently, like generating new business, that is stuff that's going to increase your average hourly rate, increase your net income, and now set your business on the course of growth. One exception to this is if you're overworked. If you're working 60 hours a week and you'd like to work 50 and you replace those 10 hours, well, maybe your 10 hours are best left as time not spent working, time with your family, time sleeping. A lot of us don't get enough sleep or don't do any planning time with our businesses. These could all be things that maybe aren't directly income generating and yet are very much big contributors to income generation indirectly. So that's kind of the exception. Just don't squander the time you get back through leverage, because then you're just going to net less money. With nothing to show for it. So just to recap, leverage is systems, tools, and people, STP, that will amplify your existing input into greater output. And the way you go about implementing leverage is to figure out your dollars per hour that you're currently averaging and replace activities that are below that with a system, tool, or person that can do it for you. If you have any questions about this, there's so many resources I can give you. There's classes, there's books, all sorts of things we can help with. So feel free to reach out to me if you're not sure about what to do next, and I'll be happy to help.